The child pulled at his mother's sleeve. As they walked through the museum, his eyes were wide with wonder as he stared at the old painting on the wall. The painting showed strange creatures. With smooth skin and only 2 arms, they stood upright like the Veron people, but they looked so different. Mama, are those the humans from your stories? The boy asked. His mother smiled and nodded. Yes, little one, but they are just stories. Humans disappeared so long ago that nobody knows if they were ever real. The boy pressed his face closer to the glass. Where did they go? Some say they destroyed themselves in a great war. Others say they flew away to the edge of the galaxy and were never seen again, but that was 500 years ago. If they were real, they are certainly gone now. Across the city, in a tall building made of silver metal, Tammin sat at his desk and stared at his computer screen. His job was to watch for enemy ships and strange signals in space. For 3 years, he had done this work and found nothing unusual. The screen showed a signal coming from the Sol sector. That area of space had been empty and silent for as long as anyone could remember. No ships went there, no planets had life. It was dead space, marked on all the maps with warnings to stay away. Tammin's hands moved quickly across the keyboard. He checked the signal again and again. It was real. Something was out there and it was broadcasting a message. He picked up his communication device and called his superior officer. Commander Yuan, we have a situation. I am detecting activity in the Sol sector. There was a long pause on the other end. That is impossible. Run a diagnostic on your equipment. I already did, sir, 3 times. The signal is real. Another pause. I am coming to your station. Do not speak of this to anyone else. Tammin sat back in his chair and stared at the screen. The signal was weak, but it was definitely there. Something was waking up in the dead zone. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Hayuri was carefully brushing dirt away from an ancient stone tablet. She was a scientist who studied old civilizations and extinct species. Most people thought her work was boring, but she loved it. Every artifact told a story about the past. This tablet was special. It had been found deep underground on a mining colony. The writing on it was in an old language that few people could read anymore. Hayuri had spent weeks translating it. The words on the tablet made her hands shake. Beware the sleepers in the dark. It read, they chose silence over destruction. They watch and wait. Do not wake them, for they are both merciful and terrible. The humans are not gone. They are only sleeping. Hayuri's communication device buzzed. It was her colleague from the museum. Hayuri, you need to come here immediately. The military is asking questions about human artifacts. They want to know everything we have. Why now? Hayuri asked. Nobody has cared about humans for centuries. I do not know, but they seem very serious. Please hurry. Hayuri gathered her papers and the photographs of the tablet. Something was happening. Something big. Commander Wu Jun stood in the command center and looked at the same signal that Tammin had found. Around him, other officers were checking their equipment and talking in worried voices. Signal was getting stronger. Sir, we are receiving a transmission. One officer said. It is a voice message. Play it. Wu Jin ordered. The room fell silent. Then a voice spoke in perfect Varan language. This is the Earth Defense Coalition. We have monitored the conflict between the Veron Empire and the Krellel Dominion for 73 years. Your war has now reached. Systems under our protection, cease all hostilities immediately, or we will be forced to intervene. The officers looked at each other in confusion. Earth, that was the human home world. From the old stories, this must be a trick by the Krellel, one officer said. They are trying to confuse us, but Wu Jun was not so sure. He had studied military history. He remembered reading about humans in old texts. They were not just myths, they were real, or at least they had been real once. Send a message to the Empress, Wu Jin said. Tell her we may have a first contact situation. Oh, on the other side of the galaxy. The Krell Dominion received the same message. The Krell were a warrior race, covered in thick scales and built for battle. They had been fighting the Von Empire for 200 years. The Krell military leaders laughed when they heard the message. Humans, those are children's stories. This is clearly a Veron trick. But some of the older Krell remembered the ancient texts. They remembered warnings about a species that could end wars before they began, a species that had weapons beyond imagination but chose not to use them. We should be careful, one old commander said. Old texts say the old texts are fairy tales, the war leader shouted. If these humans are real, they have been hiding for 500 years. They are weak. They are afraid. If they try to stop us, we will crush them. Back in the van capital, Hyrie arrived at the military command center. She had never been in such a place before. Soldiers rushed past her carrying data tablets and weapons. The air felt heavy with tension. Wu Jin met her at the entrance. Thank you for coming, Dr. Hyrie. We need your expertise. What is happening? Commander, something is coming from the Sol sector. They claim to be humans. We need to know if that is possible. Hyrie thought about the tablet she had just translated. The words echoed in her mind. Not only is it possible, Commander, I think we should be very worried. Why? Because all the old texts say the same thing. Humans did not disappear because they were weak. They disappeared because they were too strong. They left the galaxy to avoid destroying it. Wu Jun and LT Unk and GT's face went pale, and now they are coming back, far away in the darkness of space. A massive fleet began to move. The ships were sleek and powerful, built with technology that the galaxy had never seen. Inside the lead ship, Admiral Juan sat in her command chair and watched the stars. Ma'am, both the Veron and Krellel forces have received our message, her communications officer reported, and their response, Juan asked. The Veron are cautious. The Krellel are preparing to attack us. Juan closed her eyes and sighed. Some species never learn. Prepare the fleet for combat operations. But remember the protocols. Minimum necessary force only. We are here to stop a war, not start a bigger one. Yes, ma'am. The fleet moved forward, leaving slip space near a contested border world where Von and Krell forces had been fighting for months. Both sides stopped shooting at each other and turned their weapons toward the human ships. On his screen, Tammin watched as the sensors counted the human vessels. 10 ships, 20, 50, 100. They kept coming more and more until the entire sector was filled with them. How many? Wu Jin asked, standing behind Tammin. I stopped counting at 500, sir. They just keep coming. Wu Jin stared at the screen. After 500 years of silence, humanity had returned, and they had brought an armada, the galaxy was about to learn that some myths were real and some legends were more terrifying than any nightmare. Admiral Jiwen stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched as both alien fleets scrambled to form battle lines. The Veyron ships moved into a defensive formation while the Krell vessels spread out aggressively. Neither side seemed to know what to do with the sudden appearance of humanity. Open all channels, Jiwen ordered. Broadcast in every language we have on file. The communications officer nodded and activated the system. Jiwen's voice went out across the entire sector, translated simultaneously into 47 different languages and dialects. I am Admiral Jiwen of the Earth Defense Coalition. We have come to end this conflict. Both sides will stand down immediately and withdraw to neutral positions. You have 1 hour to comply. On the Veyron flagship, Commander Jiwen listened to the message. With growing amazement, the humans were speaking in languages that had not been used in centuries. Some of those dialects were considered dead, lost to time. Yet the humans spoke them perfectly. How do they know our ancient languages? One officer whispered. Because they have been watching us, Wu Jin said quietly. For 500 years they have been watching and listening. Krell had a different reaction. On their command ship, war leader Sara listened to the human message and felt rage building in her chest. The Krell did not take orders from anyone, especially not from a species that had been hiding in the darkness. This is an insult, one of her commanders growled. They think they can threaten us. Sara and LT Unk and GT's eyes narrowed. Send a response. Tell them the Krell Dominion does not bow to myths and legends. If they want to stop us, they will have to try. Her tactical officer looked worried. War leader, perhaps we should be cautious. There are so many of them. Numbers mean nothing without the will to use them. These humans have been hiding for 500 years. They are weak. Attack the nearest human vessel. Show them what happens when they challenge the Krell. The officer hesitated for only a moment before following orders. 3 Krell warships broke formation and charged toward a human destroyer at the edge of the fleet. On the human ship, Commander Minyu watched the Krell vessels approaching. He was a special forces officer trained for combat and extraction missions. His ship was smaller than the Krell warships, but he was not worried. Ma'am, 3 Krell ships incoming. Their weapons are charging. His tactical officer reported. Defensive systems active. Minyu said calmly. Do not fire until they do. Give them every chance to turn away. The Krell ships opened fire. Plasma bolts and missile salvos streaked across space toward the human destroyer. Every sensor in the sector watched to see what would happen. The human ship did not even try to dodge. The attack simply stopped before reaching the hull, absorbed by energy shields that made the alien weapons look like toys. The shields did not even flicker. Return fire, Minyu ordered. Disable only. No casualties. The human destroyer fired once. 3 precise beams of energy lanced out and struck the Krell ships. Their engines exploded in controlled bursts. Their weapon systems went dark. Life support remained intact. Within seconds, all 3 warships were drifting helplessly in space, their crews alive but completely unable to fight. Across the sector, every ship from both sides watched in stunned silence. The humans had just disabled 3 military vessels. With a single shot each, Tammen stared at his screen in disbelief. "Commander, our sensors show the human weapons operated at only 12% power. They were holding back." Tammen stared at his screen. 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 Wu Jun felt a chill run down his spine. I think they wanted to prove a point without killing anyone on the Krellel command ship. Sora stared at the tactical display. Her 3 warships had been neutralized in less than 5 seconds. The humans had not destroyed them. They had simply turned them off like someone turning off a light. All ships attack formation, Sora roared. If they want a war, we will give them one. 200 Krell warships surged forward toward the human fleet. It was the largest battle group the Krell had assembled in 50 years. They had enough firepower to level a planet. Admiral Jiwen watched the Kree fleet approaching and felt a deep sadness. They chose this path. All ships engage. Remember the protocols. Disable, do not destroy. These are still living beings. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination, as if all 500 ships shared a single mind. They did not meet the Krell charge head-on. Instead, they flowed around it like water around stones. Human ships appeared behind Krell vessels, firing precisely targeted shots that destroyed engines and weapons but left crew quarters intact. Krell missiles were intercepted before they could reach their targets. Krell plasma weapons were absorbed by shields. That seemed impossible. In 15 minutes the entire Krell battle group was disabled. Not a single ship was destroyed. Not a single crew member was killed, but every Krell vessel was drifting powerless in space. Sora sat in her command chair and felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Real deep fear. The humans had torn through her fleet like it was made of paper, and they had done it without killing anyone. This is impossible, she whispered. No species has this kind of technology. Her communications officer's voice shook. War leader, we are receiving another message from the human admiral. Jiwen's voice was cold and firm. War leader Sora, you have seen what we can do. We could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. This is your only warning. APU, stand down or next time we will not be so gentle. Meanwhile, Hayuri had been brought aboard the Veyron flagship to observe the battle. She stood next to Wu Jin and watched the tactical display with a mixture of fear and fascination. They are not even using their full strength, she said quietly. Commander, I have been reading the old texts. The ancient humans had weapons that could destroy entire star systems. If these are the same humans, what we just saw is like watching a giant fight children, while being very careful not to hurt them. Wu Jun turned to her. You said the humans left because they were too strong. What did you mean? Hayuri pulled up a document on her tablet. 500 years ago, according to the texts, humans were tearing themselves apart in a global war. They had weapons that could end all life on their planet, but somehow they stopped. They chose peace. Then they left the galaxy, saying they needed to grow up before they could interact with other species. They were afraid of themselves, Yuan realized. Yes, and now they are back, and they have had 500 years to become even more powerful. But look at what they did. Today, they defeated a major Krell fleet without killing a single warrior. They have grown up, Commander. They learned to be strong without being cruel. Wu Jin made a decision. He opened a channel to the human flagship. Admiral Jiwen, this is Commander Wu Jin of the Veron Empire. We are standing down. We will withdraw to neutral positions and await your instructions. Jiwen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but relieved. Thank you, Commander. We will send coordinates for a peace conference. It is time for this war to end. As the Veron fleet began to withdraw, Tammin noticed something on his sensors. Commander, there is something else. The human ships are sending out rescue drones to the disabled Krell vessels. They are providing emergency supplies and medical assistance. Wu Jun watched as small human craft flew to the drifting Krell ships and began helping. The warriors inside, the same humans who had just defeated them in battle, were now saving their lives. They are not conquerors, Wu said. They are something else, something we have never seen before. On the human flagship, Jiwen stood alone in her ready room and looked at an old photograph on her desk. It showed Earth blue and beautiful, taken from space. Beside it was another photo showing Earth covered in fire and smoke from ancient wars. We remember what we were, she said softly to herself. We remember the horror. We will never let it happen again, not to us and not to anyone else. She turned to look out at the stars. The first battle was over, but the real work, the work of building peace, was just beginning. And somewhere out there, some species would refuse to accept peace. Jiwen hoped she was wrong, but 500 years of watching the galaxy had taught humanity one lesson very well. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. The peace conference was held on a neutral station at the edge of the conflict zone. The station had been abandoned for decades, but human engineers had restored it in just 3 days. The speed and efficiency amazed both the Veron and Krell observers. Deja walked through the corridors of the station, preparing for his role as humanity's chief diplomat. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, but those who looked closely could see the scars on his hands and the way he moved like a trained fighter. Deja had been a soldier once during humanity's darkest days. Now he worked for peace, trying to prevent others from making the same mistakes his species had made. The conference room was large and circular with a round table at the center. Deja arrived first and arranged his papers carefully. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Empress Yuna of the Von Empire arrived next. She was tall and graceful with silver skin that reflected the light. Her attendants stayed outside as she entered alone, wanting to show she was not afraid. She looked at Deja with curiosity. You are really human, she said. I half expected this to be some elaborate trick. Deja smiled gently. I understand your doubt, Empress. We have been gone a long time. Please sit. We have much to discuss. The Krell delegation arrived last. War leader Sora entered with 4 of her commanders. Unlike Empress Yuna, Sora looked angry and humiliated. Her fleet had been defeated without casualties, which somehow made it worse. The Krell respected strength, and the humans had shown strength beyond imagination, but not all of the Krell leadership had come to the station. General Jinsk, the supreme commander of all Krell forces, had refused to attend. He had sent a message saying that the Krell Dominion would never negotiate with myths and cowards. Sora had come against his orders. Believing that peace was the only logical choice, the conference began, with Dejou standing and addressing both sides. Thank you all for coming, I know. This is difficult. War has been your reality for so long that peace seems impossible, but I am here to tell you that it is not only possible, it is necessary. The Krellos started this war. One Veron officer said angrily, they attacked our colonies without warning. The Von Empire had been expanding into our territory for decades. A Krell commander shot back, we had no choice but to defend ourselves. Dejou held up his hand. Please, I did not ask you here to assign blame. I asked you here to end the killing. Both of your civilizations are suffering. Both of you have lost millions of lives. This war serves no one. Empress Yuna leaned forward. With respect, Ambassador Dejou, you speak of peace as if it is simple, but you do not understand our history. The Krello and Veron have been enemies for centuries. I understand more than you think, Dejou said quietly. He pressed a button and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed Earth, but not the beautiful blue planet that existed now. This Earth was broken and burning. Cities were in ruins. Oceans were poisoned. The sky was filled with smoke. This is my home world 500 years ago. Dejou continued, we had just fought the most terrible war in our history. Nuclear weapons, biological weapons, artificial plagues. We nearly killed ourselves completely. 3 billion humans died in just 10 years. The room fell silent. Even Sora looked shocked. How did you survive? Empress Yuna asked. Barely, and only because at the last moment enough people chose peace over victory. We put down our weapons and swore we would never pick them up again. We isolated ourselves from the galaxy because we were afraid of what we might do to others. We spent 500 years learning to be better. Dejou changed the hologram. Now it showed Earth as it was today. Green and thriving. This is what peace can build. But we will never forget what war can destroy. That is why we came back, not to conquer but to help others avoid our mistakes. Sora spoke for the first time. You defeated my fleet. Minutes, you could conquer the entire galaxy if you wanted. Why do you not? Because conquest is not strength, it is weakness disguised as power. True strength is choosing not to destroy when you have the ability to do so. We learned that lesson in Fire and Blood. We are trying to spare you the same pain. The conference continued for hours. Dejou presented proposals for peace, including neutral buffer zones, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. Empress Yuna listened carefully and asked intelligent questions. She seemed genuinely interested in ending the war. But Sora remained troubled. Even if I agree to peace, General Jinsk will not accept it. He commands the majority of our military forces. He believes in victory through strength. Then we will have to convince him. Dejou said, you do not understand. Jins believes you are weak because you choose peace. He thinks the Krell can defeat you if we truly commit to war. Dejou's expression became sad. Then he will have to learn the hard way. I hope he does not make that choice. The conference ended with Empress Yuna agreeing to a ceasefire and negotiations. Sora agreed as well, but she warned that her authority was limited. The real test would come when they faced Jinsook and his forces. That test came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after the conference, while Dejou was traveling back to Earth on a Transport ship. His vessel detected a distress signal. A human colony ship carrying 10,000 civilians was under attack. Commander Minyu was already responding with his Special Forces unit. When Dajo's transport arrived, the scene was chaos. The colony ship was heavily damaged, venting atmosphere into space. Escape pods were launching, but several had been destroyed by weapons fire. Who is attacking them? Dajo demanded. Krello forces, Sir Minyu reported. Ships under General Jinsook and LT Unkin GT's command. They are ignoring all communication attempts. Dajo felt cold fury building in his chest. Get our people out. Use any means necessary. Minyu's teams moved with perfect precision. Human fighters screened the escape pods while transport ships evacuated the survivors. The Krell ships tried to stop them, but human point defense systems intercepted every shot. Not a single escape pod was lost after the humans arrived, but the damage was already done. When Minyu's medical teams reached the colony ship, they found 300 civilians dead, men, women, and children, who had been traveling to a new world for a fresh start. Now they would never arrive. Admiral Jiwen received the news while in a meeting with Empress Yuna. The Empress saw Ju and LT Unkin GT's expression change and knew immediately that something terrible had happened. What is wrong? Yuna asked. Jiwen looked at her with eyes like ice. General Jin's just attacked a civilian vessel. We have 300 dead, including 72 children. 8. Yuna stood up, horrified. Jinio did this, but attacking civilians is against every code of war, even Krello codes. Apparently not anymore. Jiwen said quietly. She activated her communicator. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Jiwen. We are implementing proportional response protocol. Begin mobilization for full military operations against Krell forces under General Jinsook's command. Rules of engagement are authorized for maximum pressure, minimum casualties. We will stop this general and his followers, and we will do it by the book. Dajo returned to the human flagship and went directly to the medical bay. He walked past rows of injured survivors, many of them bandaged and traumatized. He stopped at a small area where the bodies of the children had been prepared for burial. Minyu found him there, standing silently and looking at the covered forms. Ambassador, I am sorry we did not arrive sooner. You saved thousands, Dajo said. But it is not enough. It is never enough. What happens now? Dajo turned to face him. For a moment the diplomat was gone, and Minyu could see the old soldier underneath. Now we remind the galaxy why humans chose to sleep. Jinsk wanted to see our strength. He will get his wish, but he will learn that strength without mercy is not something to celebrate, it is something to fear. Across the galaxy, human fleets began to move. Ships that had been on patrol duty gathered into battle groups. Bases that had been quiet for centuries suddenly came alive with activity. Humanity had tried peace. Now they would show what happened when peace was refused. General Jinsook received reports of the human mobilization and laughed. Finally they show their true nature. Let them come. The Krell have fought wars for thousands of years. We will crush these weak humans and take their technology. But war leader Sara, watching the same reports, felt only dread. She had seen what the humans could do. She had felt their power firsthand, and she knew that Jins had just made the worst mistake of His life, the galaxy was about to learn. What happened when you hurt someone a human cared about, and the lesson would be written in fire across the stars. Human fleet arrived at the first Krell military base exactly 72 hours after the attack on the colony's ship. Admiral Jiwen had chosen that timing deliberately, 72 hours for 72 children. She wanted Jin's Suk to understand that humans remembered every single life lost. Tammin was aboard one of the human vessels as an observer. Empress Yuna had asked him to witness everything and report back truthfully. She needed to know what humanity was really capable of when pushed to war. Fleet is in position, the tactical officer reported. The Krell base has raised shields and is charging weapons. Jiwen studied the display. The base was massive, built into an asteroid and bristling with defensive weapons. It would have taken a conventional fleet weeks to crack those defenses. Broadcast our message, a human communications officer spoke into the transmitter. Krell Base Omega-7, this is the Earth Defense Coalition. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Evacuate all personnel to the surface of the nearby moon. You have 30 minutes to comply. The response came quickly in Jinsok's own voice. Humans, you have made a grave mistake. Coming here, this base is impregnable. You will break yourselves against our defenses, and we will take your ships as trophies. Tammin saw Jiwen's jaw tighten, but her voice remained calm. Very well, you have chosen your path. All ships commence operation. Target defensive systems only, no casualties. What happened next made Tammin understand why humans had isolated themselves. The human ships did not charge the base or launch massive attacks. Instead, they moved like surgeons performing an operation. Precise beams of energy struck specific points on the asteroid. Each shot was calculated to destroy a weapon imp placement or shield generator without causing structural damage to the crew. Areas, the base's defenses tried to respond, but it was like watching someone swing a hammer at ghosts. The human ships moved faster than the Krell targeting systems could track. When Krell missiles did launch, human point defense systems destroyed them before they traveled even 100 meters. In 12 minutes, the base was completely defenseless. Its weapons were slag, its shields were down, but life support remained intact, and not a single Krell warrior had been killed. Base Omega-7. You are now defenseless, Jiwen announced. Evacuate immediately. Our ground forces are coming to secure the facility. This time the Krell complied. Tammin watched as escape pods and shuttles fled toward the moon. When the last Krell had left, Minu's special forces teams went in. Minu led his team through the corridors of the base carefully. Even though sensors showed no hostiles, he took no chances. His soldiers moved in perfect formation, checking every room and corridor. They found the base's command center empty, except for one thing. On the main console, someone had left behind a data module. Minu picked it up carefully and scanned it. Admiral, you need to see this. The data module contained files about Krell military operations, troop movements, supply routes, communications, protocols. It also contained something else, evidence that Jins had been planning to use biological weapons against Veyron civilian targets. Hyeri was brought in to analyze the files. She sat in the captured command center and read through page after page of plans and orders. Her hands shook as she realized what she was reading. Commander Minyu, these files show that Jins was planning genocide. He wanted to release a plague that would kill all Veyron civilians but leave military personnel alive so they could be enslaved. Minyu's expression remained neutral, but his eyes were hard. War leader Sora needs to see this. Her people need to know what kind of leader they are following. The information was sent to Sora, who was aboard her flagship trying to maintain control of the Krell forces not loyal to Jin Suk. When she read the files, she felt sick. Jin Suk had gone beyond war. He had become a monster. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Juan. Admiral, I have seen the files from the base. I did not know about Jin Suk's plans. Many Krell did not know. We fight for territory and honor. I believe you, war leader Juan replied. That is why we are being careful to separate Jin Suk's forces from the rest of your people. We know the difference between soldiers following orders and war criminals making those orders. Over the next 3 weeks, human forces systematically dismantled Jin Suk's military infrastructure. They captured supply depots, disabled weapons, factories, and secured communications hubs. Every operation was conducted with the same surgical precision. Structures were disabled, not destroyed. Soldiers were captured, not killed. Tamon sent reports back to Empress Yuna. Every day, he described what he saw, and the Empress read each report with growing amazement. They captured a fleet of 40 warships today, Tamon wrote. They disabled the ships using some kind of electromagnetic pulse that shut down all systems without harming the crews. When Krell warriors tried to fight with small arms, human soldiers used non-lethal weapons that made them fall asleep. Not one Krell died, not one. Empress Yuna showed the reports to her council. Do you understand what this means? The humans are fighting a war without killing their enemies. This should be impossible, yet they do it every single day. Perhaps they are too soft, one counselor suggested. Perhaps they fear the consequences of actually fighting. No, Yuna said firmly. They are not soft, they are disciplined. They are so powerful that they can afford to show mercy. That is not weakness, that is the most terrifying kind of strength. Minyu and his team were given a special mission. They needed to capture General Jin Suk alive. Intelligence reports showed that Jins was hiding in a fortified command bunker on a remote planet. The mission was dangerous. The bunker was protected by Jin Suk's most loyal troops, warriors who would die rather than surrender. Minyu studied the layout carefully, planning every detail. We go in quiet, he told his team. Use sleep weapons only. These soldiers are following bad orders, but they are still soldiers. We treat them with respect. The team approached the bunker at night using stealth technology that made them invisible to Krell sensors. They moved through the defensive perimeter without triggering a single alarm. Inside the bunker, they found 300 warriors ready to fight. Minyu's team deployed sleep gas through the ventilation system. Within minutes, every Krell soldier was unconscious and breathing normally. They would wake up in a few hours with nothing worse than a headache. Jinsk was in his private chambers watching tactical displays and planning his next move. He did not even realize humans were in the bunker until Minyu walked through his door. General Jinsk, I am placing you under arrest for war crimes, including the murder of civilians and planning genocide. Jinsk reached for his weapon, but Minyu was faster. A single stun blast and the general collapsed. When he woke up, he was in a cell on a human ship, alive and unharmed despite everything he had done. With Jinsuk captured, his forces began to collapse. War leader Sora broadcast a message to all Krell military units. General Jinsuk has been captured and will face trial for his crimes. All Krell forces are ordered to stand down. The war is over. Some units surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight but found themselves facing the full might of human military power. In every engagement, the humans won. And in every engagement, they went out of their way to minimize casualties. Tammin witnessed the final battle near the Krellul home world. Jin's last loyalists made a desperate attack, hoping to break through to the planet and take hostages. The human fleet intercepted them. Admiral, they are targeting civilian areas on the planet, a tactical officer reported. Jiwon's decision was instant. Disable their weapons before they can fire. Do it now. Human ships moved at incredible speed, placing themselves between the Krell missiles and the planet below. Point defense systems destroyed every missile. Defensive shields absorbed every energy blast, and then with careful precision, human weapons disabled every single attacking ship. When it was over, Taiyaman looked at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans had just saved the Krellul home world from Jinsuk's own forces. They had protected the same people who had killed their children. He asked Minyu about it later. Why, after everything they did, why did you save them? Minyu looked tired but determined. Because this is not about revenge. It is about stopping a war. Those civilians on the planet did not attack our colony ship. Jins did. We punish the guilty, not the innocent. That is the rule. Commander Wu Jin arrived with a Veyron fleet to assist in peacekeeping operations. He met with Admiral Jiwon on her flagship and looked at her with something like, "Oh, Admiral, I have been a military officer for 30 years. I have studied warfare from dozens of civilizations, but I have never seen anything like what you have done here. You fought a war and won without becoming a monster. How?" Jiwon looked at him seriously. Because we remember what it is like to be the monster 500 years ago. We were exactly like Jinsuk. We thought strength meant being willing to kill. We thought victory justified any method, and we nearly destroyed ourselves. She pulled up a historical image on her display. It showed an ancient human city turned to glass by nuclear fire. This is what we did to ourselves. This is what we are trying to prevent everyone else from experiencing. We did not learn to be merciful because we are soft. We learned it because we know exactly what happens when mercy dies. Wujin understood. Then the humans were not showing mercy despite their strength. They were showing mercy because of their strength. They had been to the bottom of the darkness and climbed back out, and they were determined never to go back there again. The war was over. Jinsuk would face trial. The Krellul and Veyron had seen what real power looked like, and across the galaxy, people began to understand that the ancient myths were not just true, they were a warning and a promise, wrapped together in human hands. Trial of General Jinsk was held on the same neutral station where the first peace conference had taken place. Representatives from dozens of species came to witness it. The humans had insisted that Jinsuk receive a fair trial with proper legal representation, even though everyone knew he was guilty. Dezhou sat in the observation gallery and watched as evidence was presented, the files from the captured bases, testimony from Krell's soldiers who had followed Jinsuk's orders, records of the attack on the colony ship. The case was overwhelming. Jinsk stood in the defendant's area, still defiant. When given a chance to speak, he glared at the judges. I did what was necessary for my people. War requires hard choices. The Krell do not apologize for being strong. The head judge, a human woman named Unjai, looked at him with sadness. General Jinsuk, strength is not measured by how many you can kill. It is measured by how many you can save. You confused power with strength, and that confusion led to the deaths of innocents. This court finds you guilty of war crimes. The sentence was life imprisonment in a rehabilitation facility. The humans did not believe in execution. Even for war criminals, Jinsuk would spend the rest of his life learning about the species he had tried to destroy, in the hope that he might someday understand what he had done wrong. As Jinsk was led away, war leader Sora approached Dezhou. She had been in the gallery watching everything. Ambassador, I must ask, why do you not execute him? He killed your children. Your people would be justified in demanding blood. Dezhou looked at her thoughtfully. If we killed him, what would we become? We would be saying that some lives have value and some do not. That is the thinking that starts wars. We have to be better than that. Even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. 3 months after the trial, the Galactic Mediation Council held its first official meeting. The council chamber was built on a space station that orbited between human, Veyron, and Krell territories. It was designed to be neutral ground where disputes could be resolved with words instead of weapons. Admiral Jiwen had retired from military service to chair the council. She sat at the center of a curved table with representatives from 19 different species seated around her. Empress Yuna and war leader Sara were both present, now as partners rather than enemies. This council exists for one purpose, Jiwen announced: to prevent wars before they start. We will mediate disputes, enforce peace agreements, and protect species that cannot protect themselves. But we will not be conquerors. We will not impose our will on others. We are here to serve, not to rule. The first major decision of the council was to establish demilitarized buffer zones between former war zones. Human peacekeeping forces would patrol these areas, ensuring neither side tried to restart the conflict. Veyron and Krell forces would gradually withdraw to their own territories. Tammin had been promoted to chief liaison officer between humanity and the Veyron Empire. He worked closely with human officers to coordinate the transition. One day, while reviewing patrol schedules, he noticed something interesting. Commander Minyu, why are you assigning human ships to escort Krell trade vessels? The Krell have their own military. Minyu smiled slightly. Because trust is built through actions, not words. If we protect their traders, they will see we mean what we say about peace. Besides, piracy has been a problem in some regions. We are making the trade lanes safe for everyone. Policy worked. Within a year, Krell merchants were requesting human escorts for their most valuable shipments. Same warriors who had fought against humanity now trusted humans to protect Their trade, Hyrie published her findings about human history in a book that became required reading in schools. Across the galaxy, the title was simple. They were never myths, they were warnings. In it she detailed humanity's rise, fall, and rebirth. The most powerful section of the book described the moment when humans had chosen peace over extinction. They stood at the edge of oblivion. Hyrie wrote, and instead of taking one more step, they turned around and started walking back toward the light. It took them 500 years, but they made it, and now they are trying to help the rest of us do the same. The book became a sensation. Young people from dozens of species read it and began to question their own culture's attitudes toward war and peace. A whole generation was growing up with humans as role models instead of myths. Meanwhile, humanity began carefully sharing its technology with other species. Medical advances that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. Agricultural techniques that could turn barren worlds into gardens. Defensive shields that could protect civilian populations without being used for aggression. But humans were very careful about what they shared. Weapons technology was strictly controlled. Any species that wanted advanced defensive systems had to agree to join the Mediation Council and submit to regular inspections. It was not about control, the humans explained. It was about responsibility. Empress Yuna visited Earth for the first time during a formal state visit. She was the first non-human head of state to set foot on the human home world. Dezhou personally gave her a tour of the planet. They visited the memorial for the Great War, a massive structure built where one of the last nuclear weapons had detonated 500 years ago. The names of the 3 billion dead were carved into black stone walls that stretched for Killam. We built this so we would never forget, Dezhou said quietly. Every human child comes here at least once in their education. We want them to understand what war really costs. Yuna ran her hand along the carved names. You turned your greatest shame into your greatest lesson. That is wisdom. War leader Sara also visited Earth, though she was more nervous about it. She had fought against humans and feared they would treat her with hostility. Instead, she was welcomed as an honored guest. You met her at the spaceport. War leader Sara, welcome to Earth. I am told you want to visit our military academy if it would not be inappropriate. Sara said carefully, I want to understand how you train soldiers to be so disciplined. At the academy, Sara watched human cadets training. She noticed that their exercises focused as much on negotiation and de-escalation as on combat skills. One training scenario involved the cadets being given the option to resolve a conflict either through force or diplomacy, with higher scores awarded for diplomatic solutions. You teach them that fighting is a last resort, Sara observed. We teach them that fighting is a failure. You corrected. Every time we have to use weapons, it means we failed to find a better solution. That does not mean we avoid fighting when necessary. It means we work very hard to make it not necessary. Sara returned to the Krell Dominion with new ideas. She began reforming Krell military training, adding diplomatic education and conflict resolution to the traditional warrior curriculum. It was controversial, but she had support from the younger generation who had seen humans in action. Jiwen spent her evenings in her Quarters aboard the council station. Reviewing reports and making plans. One night Admiral Wu Jin visited her. With a bottle of vain wine. Admiral Jiwen, I thought you might need this. I am told it is supposed to be quite good. She smiled and invited him in. As they shared the wine, Wu Jin asked the question that had been bothering him. Do you ever wonder if you did the right thing coming back to the galaxy? I mean, you could have stayed hidden and avoided all of this. Jiwen looked out the window at the stars. Every day I wonder, but then I think about those children on the colony ship. If we had not been here, who would have stopped Jin Suk? How many more would have died? We may not be perfect, but we are trying to help. You are doing more than helping. You are changing everything. The galaxy will never be the same. I hope you are right. I hope we are building something that will last after we are gone. The Council's first major test came when a small war broke out between two species on the other side of the galaxy. Both sides called for mediation, but hardliners on each side wanted to continue fighting. The Council sent a mixed force of human Var and Krell peacekeepers. Working together, they established a ceasefire and began mediation. It took 6 months, but eventually a peace agreement was signed. No conquerors, no losers. Just two species agreeing to coexist. When news of the successful mediation spread, 3 more conflicts requested council intervention. The system was working. 5 years after humanity's return, Hyrie published a follow-up to her first book. This one was called The Children of Sleeping Giants. It told the stories of the new generation growing up in a galaxy where humans were teachers and protectors. In the conclusion, she wrote, "Our parents told us humans were myths. They told us that species could not change, that war was inevitable, that peace was a dream for the naive. But humans proved all of that wrong. They showed us that power without wisdom is just destruction, and that true strength means protecting even those who have wronged you." The ancient tales said humans were gods. They were wrong. Humans are not gods. They are just people who made mistakes, learned from them, and decided to be better. And if they can do it, perhaps we can too. On Earth, in a small garden near the Great War Memorial, Dezhou sat with his grandchildren and told them stories, not myths or legends, but true stories about the galaxy and all the species in it. "Grandfather, are we the heroes?" one child asked. Dezhou thought carefully before answering. "No, child, we are not heroes. Heroes are people who do extraordinary things. We are just people who remember our mistakes and try very hard not to repeat them. The real heroes are the ones who choose peace when war is easier, the ones who forgive when revenge is simpler, the ones who build when destruction is faster, like Empress Yuna and war leader Sora, exactly like them. They chose to trust us even though we were strangers. They chose peace even though it meant admitting their war was pointless. That took real courage. Far out in deep space, human monitoring stations detected something troubling. Strange energy signatures were appearing. At the edge of the galaxy, something was coming, something large and unknown. Admiral Jiwen received the report and immediately called an emergency council meeting. "We have a potential threat approaching from beyond our space. We do not know what it is yet, but we need to be prepared." Empress Yuna stood up. "Whatever it is, we will face it together. The Veyron Empire stands with humanity." War leader Sora nodded. The Krell Dominion as well, you taught us. That strength means protecting others. Now it is our turn to stand beside you. Around the table, every representative agreed the galaxy had changed. Species that had been enemies were now allies. And they all knew that if humans had taught them anything, it was that the best way to face the unknown was. Together, Jiwen looked at the faces around her and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope, real, genuine hope for the future. Then let us begin, she said. We have work to do. The galaxy is counting on us. Outside the council chamber in a small viewing area, a parent told their child about the day the humans returned. They thought we were myths, the parent said, and in a way we were the myth that says people can change, that wars can end, that tomorrow can be better than today. And we came back to prove that myth was true. The child looked out at the stars and dreamed of a future written not in fire and death, but in cooperation and life, a future the sleeping giants had woken up to build. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages, beings looked up at the same stars and knew they were not alone. Humanity had returned, the long sleep was over, and the real work of building a better galaxy had just begun.